There's something quiet about the moment you realize you've been staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes, and you can't remember a single word. Not because you weren't paying attention, not because you're not smart enough, but because something inside you wasn't listening. Your eyes moved across the page, your hands held the book, but somewhere between the words and your mind, there was only silence, a peculiar kind of emptiness. And here's what nobody tells you: your brain isn't broken. It's protecting you from something. But what? Let me tell you something strange about memory. You can read the same page 5 times, 10 times, 20, and each time it feels familiar. Your eyes recognize the shape of the paragraphs. The headings feel like old friends. There's this quiet sense of, yes, I know this. But then the book closes, someone asks you a question, or the exam appears in front of you, and suddenly, nothing. Not confusion, not it's on the tip of my tongue, just absence. Like the information was never there at all. It's a peculiar kind of emptiness, recognition without retention. You witnessed the words, but you never held them. And here's the paradox nobody warns you about. The more you review, the less you remember. Because each time you reread, you're not learning, you're rehearsing familiarity. Your brain says, I've seen this before, and moves on. It mistakes recognition for understanding, presence for possession. The information slides off the surface of your mind like water off glass. Smooth, effortless, gone. You're doing everything right, taking notes, highlighting the important parts, reviewing before bed, following all the rules they taught you. But here's what they don't tell you. Familiarity is a drug. It feels like progress, it looks like learning, but it's actually the opposite. Because when you reread something you already know, you're not confronting what you don't understand. You're visiting what's comfortable, safe, already mapped. And your brain, it loves safety. It craves the known, which is exactly why it refuses to remember. But that's not even the strangest part. There's something else happening beneath the surface. Something about why you keep choosing the familiar path, even when it leads nowhere. Consider this. What if you're not actually trying to learn? I know how that sounds, but stay with me. Picture someone studying. Their desk is perfect. Notes organized by color, highlighters lined up, everything labeled, indexed, ready. They look focused, productive, serious about their work. But look closer. Look at their eyes. There's something absent there, a kind of glaze. They're moving through motions, not meaning, performing the ritual of being a student without ever touching the thing itself, the transformation, the uncomfortable shift from not knowing to knowing. Because here's what passive learning actually does. It protects you. It looks like progress, it feels like productivity, but it demands nothing from you. No risk, no exposure, no moment where you have to face the gap between what you think you know and what you can actually do. You're not confronting your ignorance, you're decorating around it. Think about it. When you reread your notes, you're visiting information that already feels safe. When you highlight, you're marking territory you've already claimed. When you review, you're rehearsing comfort. It's consumption without consequence, input without transformation. And your brain loves this. Because consuming information is easy, it's passive. You can fail at it privately. Nobody has to know that nothing stuck, that you read the chapter 5 times and still can't explain it, that the words move through you like water through a sieve. But confronting what you don't know? That's different. That's vulnerable. That requires you to speak, to write, to attempt something you might get wrong, to expose the emptiness where understanding should be. And that exposure, that's what your brain is quietly, carefully avoiding. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because there's something deeper happening. Something about who you are when you don't know, who you might have to become if you did. But why would your brain protect you from learning? Because there's something deeper happening, something about identity. Here's what most people miss about memory. Your brain doesn't forget randomly. It's not broken, it's not weak, it's selective, ruthless even, and sometimes it discards exactly what you're working hardest to keep. Not because the information isn't important, but because knowing it would change something fundamental about who you are, about what you're allowed to want, about the life you'd be responsible for living. Because here's the truth, once you know something, you can't unknow it. You can't claim ignorance anymore. You can't say, I didn't realize or I wasn't sure. Learning creates responsibility, and responsibility is heavy. Watch this happen in real time. A student sits at their desk, medical textbooks stacked like a promise. They read about anatomy, pathology, procedures. They review the material again and again, but nothing sticks. The information slides through their mind like sand through fingers. They think they're failing, lazy, not smart enough. But look closer. Their body tenses when they open those books. Their breathing shallows. There's a quiet resistance in their shoulders, their jaw, the way they hold the pen. Not because they can't learn, but because some part of them knows if they master this material, they'll become a doctor. And if they become a doctor, they'll live a life their parents chose, not theirs. So the brain does something merciful. It forgets again and again, not because they're stupid, but because their soul is protecting them from a life that isn't theirs. The body remembers what the mind pretends to forget. Because carrying knowledge is like carrying witness. Once you see, you can't unsee. Once you understand, you can't pretend confusion. Every piece of information you truly learn makes you responsible for what you do with it. And sometimes that weight is unbearable. And that brings us to the real question. What are you actually resisting? There's a quiet story underneath all those study sessions. The hours you spend reviewing, going over what you already know, rewriting notes that were already clear, highlighting passages you've highlighted before. It feels like work. It looks like dedication. But here's what's actually happening. You're creating the appearance of effort without the risk of discovering you can't do something. Because when you review comfortable material, you stay in control. You know the answers. You recognize the patterns. There's no moment where you have to sit with confusion, with not knowing, with the vulnerable space of trying something you might fail at. It's an emotional thermostat. You keep yourself in the zone where you feel competent but never challenged, productive but never exposed. And your brain maintains this temperature carefully. It guides you back to what's familiar, what's safe, what won't reveal the gap between who you think you are and who you'd need to become. Because when you confront what you don't know, you confront who you're not yet. And that's an identity crisis, right there, hidden inside every learning struggle. Carl Jung talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. What we avoid in learning mirrors what we avoid in ourselves, the weakness we won't admit, the incompetence we can't tolerate, the version of us that doesn't know, that struggles, that has to start from zero. So we study what's comfortable, review what's familiar, stay where we already are. Not because we're lazy, but because facing what we don't know means facing who we're not. And that confrontation, it asks you to let go of the person you've been pretending to be. But here's where it gets paradoxical. You know that feeling when someone asks you to explain something you studied, and suddenly your mind goes blank? Not confused, not searching for the right words, just empty. Like reaching into a pocket you were sure held something, only to find it's been empty all along. That moment is a moment of truth, because recall doesn't just test what you know, it exposes the gap between what you pretended to know and what actually lives inside you, between what passed through your mind and what changed it. And that exposure is terrifying. Your brain doesn't store information like a hard drive. It doesn't keep everything you feed it. It's selective, ruthlessly so. It only remembers what it needs to defend, use, or become. Information without transformation is just noise. Data without integration is just passing through. Think about it. You can read 100 pages and remember nothing, or read one sentence that rewires something in you forever. The difference isn't repetition, it's whether the information demanded something from you, whether it challenged who you are, whether it required you to shift, adapt, integrate. There's a physical sensation to this, that moment when you reach for understanding and grasp at air. Your chest tightens slightly, your eyes move, searching, but there's nothing there to find. Not because you didn't try, but because trying isn't the same as changing. You were present with the information, but you never let it touch you. Never let it disrupt the structure of who you think you are. And that's where everything inverts. Let's talk about who you're becoming when you study, not what you're learning. Who? Because there's a difference between saying, I'm trying to learn math, and I'm someone who learns. One is an action, temporary, external. The other is identity, a story about who you are at your core.
And here's what most people don't realize. Your brain guards that story like a fortress. You can't remember what contradicts who you think you are. Your mind won't hold information that threatens the narrative you've built about yourself. It's not about intelligence, it's about identity protection. Watch this happen. Someone says, I'm just not a math person. They've said it for years, believed it, built a life around it. Now they sit down to study calculus. The information comes in, clear, logical, step by step. But somewhere between the page and their memory, it vanishes. Not because the material is too hard, but because remembering it would shatter who they've claimed to be. If they understand math, they can't be not a math person anymore. And that loss of identity, that's terrifying. Your brain protects identity above all else, even above truth, even above growth. Think of it this way. Knowledge that aligns with your identity is furniture. It fits, it belongs, it stays. But knowledge that contradicts who you think you are, that's an intruder. And your mind will do everything it can to keep it out. Your brain isn't broken, it's loyal. Loyal to the story you've been telling about yourself. Even when that story is limiting you, even when it's no longer true. Change your story, change your memory. It's that simple and that difficult, but that's not even the deepest layer. There's something quiet about the moments when information becomes part of you. It's not when you read it, not when you highlight it, not even when you understand it. It's when you have to speak it out loud. When you try to explain something to another person, or even to yourself, your brain does something different. It reorganizes, it clarifies, it filters the noise and keeps only what's essential. The act of articulating forces integration, because the brain remembers what it has to articulate and defend. Think about it. You can read a textbook chapter and forget it by morning. But try teaching that same chapter to someone who's never heard of it. Suddenly, you remember. Not perfectly, not completely, but more than you ever did just reading. That's the difference between witness knowledge and owned knowledge. Witnessing is passive. You're a spectator to information. But owning? That requires you to take responsibility, to put it in your own words, to stand behind it. You don't remember what you consume, you remember what you become responsible for. And here's the vulnerable part. When you speak your understanding out loud, it can be wrong, incomplete, clumsy, judged. That exposure is uncomfortable. Your inadequacy becomes visible. But that's precisely why it sticks. Because vulnerability forces your brain to pay attention, to care, to encode the moment as important. In other words, memory isn't storage, it's integration. So what changes? Not techniques, not study hacks, not 5 new ways to highlight your notes. Your relationship to knowing. Stop asking, did I study? Start asking, what changed in me? Because that's the difference between performance and transformation. Between going through the motions and actually becoming someone different. The shift is subtle, but total. You start recognizing that struggle isn't failure, it's the sound of your brain rewiring. The discomfort of recall, that's growth. The blank mind when you try to explain something, that's honest feedback. And here's the reframe. Every forgotten fact is a question. Not, why can't I remember this, but do I actually need this, or am I performing? Because maybe you're not meant to remember everything. Maybe your brain is smarter than you think. Maybe it's been protecting you from wasting energy on information that doesn't serve who you're becoming. You have permission to learn selectively, ruthlessly, honestly, to let go of what doesn't matter, to focus on what changes you. Remember that blank mind after reading? That peculiar emptiness we started with? Maybe it wasn't failure. Maybe it was your brain telling you the truth.
Not you're bad at learning, but you're learning the wrong things or for the wrong reasons. Maybe the problem isn't your memory. Maybe it's your relationship to becoming. Here's what I know about you. If you've struggled with learning, you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not less intelligent than everyone else. You're protective. Your brain has been doing exactly what it's designed to do, guarding you from information that would demand something you weren't ready to give, from knowledge that would make you responsible for a life you hadn't chosen, from understanding that would shatter the story you've been telling about who you are. And there's a quiet courage in what comes next, in admitting what you don't know, in letting go of the performance, in being honest about what actually matters to you. Because here's the final paradox. The fastest learners aren't the smartest. They're the most honest. Honest about what matters, what doesn't, and who they're becoming. They don't fight their resistance, they listen to it. Next time your mind goes blank, don't panic. Listen. Your brain might be trying to tell you something true. Not that you're failing, but that you're protecting yourself from becoming someone you're not meant to be. And that truth, it's the beginning of real learning.